And if you're looking for the talk, Common Game Designer Mistakes and How to Fix Them, it's still the same talk. I just updated the title based on Chris's recommendation, actually. And so this just fits the topic of what I'm talking about better. So I'm talking about game designers and how our company is built to train them and fix their bad habits. And while this is focused on game designers and free-to-play mobile game design, I hope this talk is useful regardless of which platform or genre or even what job you're in. So a little about me. I started working in games in 2002 in the Philippines. I worked for Anino Games and Boomzap for a while. I've been a game designer and a writer and a producer. And 3 years ago, I started my own company with 4 other founders called Altitude Games. We are a mobile free-to-play company based in Manila. And we have about 30 people now, and 5 of those are game designers. So there are some special factors that affect how Altitude works. First is we're a work-from-home company. And what that means is while we do have a physical office space, maybe 4 days out of 5, we're all working from home. So we're doing it all online. And that automatically adds a communication barrier to anything that you're trying to do, or if you're training somebody new. So that's something to think about through the talk. Second is because we're based in Southeast Asia, we have a smaller pool of people to hire from, and usually they're not as experienced. It's just a younger industry in general. And third, our local culture, I'm not going to make this anything about race or anything like that, but it's just a fact that Filipinos in general, we're very hierarchical. So that means that we are very respectful of authority to a fault. We don't question, we don't talk back. You can imagine how this happens in management as well. We're very non-confrontational. And this is something we're trying to improve just as a company, but something to think about. So I'm going to generalize a little bit here on game designers. I'm not going to talk about the perfect unicorn game designer that comes in, all trained up, ready to go. I'm going to talk about the 2 ends of the spectrum, which is actually what we usually see. The first one is the fresh graduate. So in the Philippines, we've only had game-related courses recently, which means we have an influx of people who wanted to make games and are now graduating from a game-related course. Unfortunately, when they come in, they believe that they want to make games, but they really mean they want to make AAA games or super indie games or something. They're not thinking about mobile free-to-play design as their goal. They've made games before, but they've usually made them in game jams or maybe a school project. They're working with their friends or they're working alone, so they're not used to working in a bigger environment with people they don't know. And they want to prove themselves because they're very young, and that means that they work extra hours. If they're working from home, you can't really track it, so they'll work all night. They don't ask for help much, and if they see that they make a mistake, they feel really, really bad about it, like they take it personally. So that's the youngest end of the spectrum. The other end is the burnt out, experienced guy. So this guy has hopped around a bunch of game companies, maybe 3 or 4 game companies. They've worked on games that they didn't necessarily like. They're used to the grind, they're used to crunch time, but they're also used to management telling them exactly what to do, or a publisher or a client, whoever it is. And because they're coming in senior, they kind of want to show that they're experienced. So that means that they know everything, and they don't ask for help either. And if they make a mistake or they break something, they're a little defensive about it. And obviously this is, this is a stereotype, but if you look at the 2 ends of the spectrum, they actually have common problem areas that we see. It's how they work in a team, how motivated they are to work independently, and decision-making, which is the most important part of game design, is deciding which option to take over another. And if you don't address these areas, they can just grow out into all the problems that we see later on. People who design in a cave and don't consult, people who over-consult, people who are hesitant to lead, they don't work well with people, they make bad decisions, they don't ever make decisions, etc. And so all of this, what we've done as a company is to build it to address them systematically. So as soon as they come in, we try to get rid of those bad habits or tendencies. So I'm going to talk about the 3 steps. Basically, it's the life cycle of a game designer in our company. It starts with how we hire them. So our hiring process is done mostly online. Obviously, you go through the resumes, which come with a portfolio. But automatically bad games are out. And there's a difference between, it's a badly made game with a good heart or good intentions, or it's just really, really bad. Like, there's no way that this designer knows what he or she's doing, and so bad games are out. We send an email questionnaire if they pass, with the usual questions, like what kind of game do you want to work on, and how do you deal with conflict, things like that. We're not as interested in what their answers are, because they're gonna say what you want to hear, but we're looking at their written skills. Bad English is out, and English is not our first language, so this is actually harder than it looks. And because we chat all the time online, this is important. If they pass that, we go to an interview process, which is face-to-face. And this is where you can kind of get a feel of a person, ego is out. I know that's like a general statement, but basically you can tell if they'll work well with the team or not, how hungry they are to learn, things like that. And then the last part is an exam. So our design exam is also work from home. It's 1 week, unsupervised. And we basically give them a template of things to fill out. So the first part is a competitive analysis. So they're pretending that they're pitching to us as a publisher. We give them a genre, and now they have to do a competitive study with games that are out. And then they make an actual pitch where they're pitching their own game idea to us. The template is provided so they don't have to worry about that. It's more of seeing how much of free-to-play they understand and their ability to, write short and sell their idea. And so after all that, basically, we are looking for things that we can't train. So we don't test for Unity. I know that a lot of companies do this, but for us, like I personally didn't know Unity when I started. It's something that we think you can learn. Retention and monetization knowledge is probably low because, again, younger pool, or they're not coming from mobile free-to-play, possibly. We're not too impressed with experience because, again, if they're hopping around different companies, it's possible, there's a bad reason for that, or they have bad habits that they're bringing in. We're really looking for behavior, and so every step is looking for a particular thing. Personally, for game designers, I am looking for their aptitude, their grit, their ability to bang at something until they get the solution. And people will quit in the design exam, not because it's hard, but because it's more of an unknown, and you have a week to do it from home. If they can't do it, for that, then they probably can't work with us. So once they come in, we've built all these systems that address the 3 major problem areas. So the first is teamwork. Because we're a work-from-home company, everybody has to over-communicate. And this is really hard. We still have problems with it today. It means that they have to be online. We use HipChat, and that's our office, so you have to be online there, even if you're not working, or you can be summoned on your phone. We've started using Discord, and everybody hangs out in Discord, and if you have a question, you just pull somebody into a room and you talk about it. And we do Skype for longer calls. And the designers have to constantly communicate with the team, and they comment on every single work in progress. So for example, artists will spam, 10 works in progress a day. The designer is the one giving comments on everything, and he has to keep communicating what he's doing, even if he's just thinking about it. And that's how we monitor work, because otherwise, you can't just work on something secretly and show it at the end of the day. That doesn't work for us. And how to do that is we've actually scheduled things that happen like clockwork so people don't have to think about them. Obviously, you have some Scrum-related things like daily stand-ups and sprint reviews, but we also have a weekly company meeting. Our Mondays are all meetings, so it's the company meeting, it's your team meeting, it's your department meeting. And quarterly, we've started doing formal performance reviews, which I'll talk about later on, and also one-on-one calls with HR. And so this looks like a lot, but really people don't think about it. This is just how the company runs. And at least at any step of this, we can identify problems. The second part is motivation. So if you're working from home, like the biggest question I get is, how do you make sure people are working? Like, you don't. I understand that it's better, like as a leader, as a manager, to kind of look at somebody's computer screen. We're not going to do that, obviously. So what we do is we have to force people to work independently. And so that means as soon as they come in on day 1, they're thrown into a real project. They're not quarantined somewhere where they can't mess anything up. They have to learn Unity, learn all the tools, and be productive. By week 1, they're checking in work. There's no micromanagement, and designers are expected to lead. So that means that if you're familiar with Scrum, you have a bunch of tasks, you get your own task, and you're expected to work on that every day without somebody poking at you and checking your work. But as a designer, the way you can do that really is to give them the tools to be independent. So anytime they have an idea, they can prototype it by themselves without bothering somebody else. So we use Balsamiq a lot for mock-ups. I have talked about Balsamiq in all my talks. They should give me a commission. If anyone here is from Balsamiq, I want to meet them. But this is a GIF of me setting up a game within 3 minutes. And it's a clickable PDF. So you export it as a PDF, share it with everybody, and you can test someone's flow or UX flow pretty quickly. It's great. We use Unity for our games, and what we do there is the coders will set up not really the editors, but really just exposing all the variables in Unity. So if I wanted to prototype and balance something, I don't have to wait for a build. I just, change the values, press play, oh, that didn't work, do that over and over really quickly. So it's great. We use Google Sheets or Excel for anything else like economy projections, localization, and we have daily builds. This runs like clockwork as well, and the designer is in charge of making sure that the daily build is not broken. So in the morning, if you come in and why is it broken? It's usually the designer's fault for not testing. In fact, we have more than one build a day. It's just that this is the one that runs every night like clockwork. Last is decision making, and this is the fuzziest part of being a game designer, is how do you become a good game designer? And for me, a game designer is more of like a captain of a ship. And so you're in the middle of open water, you have no idea where land is, but your team is asking you, where's land? And your job is to say, it's that way, when you have no idea which way land is. And that's pretty much the games industry, especially mobile games industries. You don't know if your decision is going to convert to a hit or not. But really, we're just guessing. And so how do you do that properly? It has to be a well-informed guess, and you have to guess fast. So if I point, this is what we're doing for a game, and we're heading out there, and it's wrong, I have time to turn around, come back the way I came, and do it another way. So that's why also we prototype everything very fast. So how do you improve a game designer's decision-making? So the first is you have to make it easy to get information, so to be well-informed for that guess. So obviously everyone plays a lot of games, but we also have a folder on Box for screenshots. So every time you're playing a game, you just take a bunch of screenshots, especially tutorials, dump them on Box. So at any time, okay, I'm looking for UI for, let's say, a runner. I go to the runner folder. There are 20 runners. I check, okay, this is how they did it. It's very easy. We have a design channel on HipChat where we, say, I'm thinking about this. What do you guys think? And so the designers are talking to each other. You'll be surprised how little this happens if you're, focused on your own milestone and the projects aren't sharing information. But having the design channel, encouraging them to talk to each other and play each other's games as well. We have regular play tests. It really just works as osmosis, and the learning is spread across designers. Second is you have to make them prove their point quickly. So screenshots are good, mock-ups, for example, Balsamiq. I have some designers who still draw. I have one person in the company who uses PowerPoint. I don't know why, but he likes it. He's faster there, so just do a PowerPoint of something. And quick prototypes. We have prototype builds all the time. The last part is probably the hardest for me, is to give your designers the freedom to make that call. So that means that even if you think that the call is wrong, let's say they want to try out a new event, or they want to go this way for a feature. If it's obviously wrong, then we can't do it. But if it's something that we can't prove until it's out to market, okay, why don't we try it? It's not too expensive, let's see. Because that way, they're accountable for their own mistakes. If you keep checking their work and just telling them what to do, then they're not motivated to make their decisions. They just kind of wait for you to say what you want it to happen. Lastly is development. So by development, I mean that once they're all trained up, they've been with us for a couple of months, maybe years, how do they become better game designers? So I mentioned that we have quarterly reviews and quarterly calls with our HR associate, and the calls are the best thing we've ever done. This is from Pickpock, by the way. I'm just paranoid if Mario was here. Okay, cool. So in the quarterly calls, our HR person calls up every single person for 15 minutes, asks how they're doing. and they will say all the problems that they have about the company openly, even if they know it's going to get to us. But they would never tell it to our face. Again, it's a non-confrontational culture. And so these are actual quotes from the calls. And basically the design team says they want to keep learning, but because they're so busy at their work, they don't have a chance to. And so what we've done with that is we've done formal design training. So that means that every week, on Monday, we have 1 hour where they're doing an assignment. And it's a different topic every time. And each person gets 10 minutes to present their week's work, and everybody fires at will, meaning everyone asks them questions, just bombards them. This is open to everyone, not just designers, and we've had really good success with it. So for example, we've done free-to-play assignments where you take a free-to-play concept and you apply it to your game. So there's a great book called the Free-to-Play Toolbox, which I highly recommend. And for example, you can take a slide out of that book. It could be about friction, or it could be about pricing, or whatever. And you apply it to your own project. We've had them work with our data team, our marketing team. It's a whole wide range, and it's pretty fun. You'll be surprised that they actually want to do extra work. Second is writing training. So this is the one that they want the most because we haven't had a lot of it. So here, while designers are not required to write well, it would be amazing if they did. And so we train them to write 4 games. So it's not creative writing, it's not writing a novel. It's, how do you write a tutorial in 140 characters or less? And so, for example, when Pokemon Go came out, we used this tool called Hemingway for them to write the reviews. And so the game review outline was given, because again, that's not something they needed to concern themselves with, but we were checking how they can write concisely. And what Hemingway does is it checks your writing style and gives you a reading level. So anything over 5th grade is too hard to read. And so it's great, it's free, again, highly recommend. Another thing we did was we did a humor challenge where they had to make a viral image of their game that would be posted to Facebook, and they just had to be funny, which is very hard to train. Again, we gave good examples for that. So it's cool, we'll probably do more of this later on. The last one and the most involving one is pitching training. So once in a while, we have a pitch that we need to do. It could be for fun, or it could be actually a real pitch to a publisher. And so we open it to everyone in the company, and again, we give the template. And every week, they present it online. We revise the draft. It takes about 4 weeks. And at the end of the 4th week, they pitch it in person. And it's a lot of fun because we've had artists join, we've had a data team join, and their pitches, the pitches that win, actually end up being real games that we do. Just random, there is a local delicacy in the Philippines called pichi pichi, which is a cassava cake. And so in the last pitching challenge, we bought a shit ton of pichi pichi to make it a pitching pichi pichi challenge. It's probably not funny, but anyway, they ate a lot. And so what's great also about this is because the drafts are being revised online, you remove the fear of speaking in front of a crowd. And by the time they get to pitching in front of you, they're comfortable with their pitch, they know it inside out, they've dealt with the problems. And yeah, so it's great. So basically, identify your designer's problem areas. I'm aware that in your company, you might have a different target area that you want to fix. But as long as you identify it, you can build your company to systematically address them. And it's not that we don't deal with designers on a case-to-case basis, too. We do. But it's just much easier for us if you train people this way, and you set up your company culture this way. And so it works for everyone, artists, programmers, everybody over-communicates, everyone works independently. Training, we've done art training as well. That's it. I realized I didn't introduce myself, did I? I'm Luna Javier, Creative Director, Altitude Games. Awesome. Thank you. Do you guys have any questions?
Hey, so good. So good. There's so much useful info here. Any questions from the audience?
Thank you for your talk.
You're
it was
welcome.
great. I wanted to know, what do you guys do when you have designers that make like a bad call, or even like repeated bad calls? Like, how do you guys handle that as a company?
So the question was, how do we handle designers who make repeated bad calls? Hard. It's very hard. We actually had a designer that he stayed with us for maybe almost 2 years, and he had to leave because he just wasn't improving. Basically, you have to look at why he's making the bad calls. Is it because we expected too much or we didn't give him enough information? Did we not teach it properly? That one I would do on a case-to-case basis. I'm trying to think of another person who's still with us. Ideally, also, you want to do it in a way that the bad calls are prevented. So, for example, I have an idea for an event. They prototype it first, play test it with the entire team or the entire company, and then everybody will say, this is not fun, this is not working out, right? Or maybe it gets past that, and okay, let's now make art assets for it, or music, or code, or whatever. Then everybody plays it again, or it goes through QA, and then you get feedback again that, oh, well, I don't know, this isn't very fun, etc. And then when it goes to market, and then it's a bad call, then you have a real problem because it costs you real money. So I think if you have those daily feedback loops, and with me, creative director, and also their team leads, their teams, the companies, and then QA, you can minimize damage. But the calls are still being made. I mean, you can't, like, nobody's perfect on the first try. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you have any tips for, say, a AAA designer who has no free-to-play experience to get into free-to-play?
Okay, so the question was, if you're a AAA game designer and you want to go into free-to-play, like joining a company, or I guess it doesn't matter.
Like, if I were to want to join your company.
Oh, well. First I have to give you my card. No, I'm kidding. Well, one of the things we look for is that you're familiar with free-to-play games at all. So I always ask, what game are you playing now? Or what game have you spent the most money on? And a lot of people say, I've spent the most money on Overwatch, or World of Warcraft, or Call of Duty, or whatever it is. And that's not going to get you barred. But if you're going to work with us, for example, then have you played any match 3s? Do you understand how they work? The pitch test as well will inform you if this is the kind of thing you want to do, because then we're going to have what's the retention of your game? What's the monetization of your game? If you're not familiar with it, then you can research it because you're doing it from home. And you can ask questions during the exam process as well. And so from there, you can tell if this is something you want to do, and we can tell if you're asking the right questions and you really understand it. I would just say play a ton of games, all the games, including the bad ones, and we will overlook experience. It's just based on your base understanding of it. I hope that understands your question. I'm terrible with questions. Hi.
Hi, great talk. Thanks for sharing that information.
Thank you.
I was really curious how you guys approach, maybe you can share a story of maybe a game that launched that didn't do too well, and how'd you guys kind of work through that process, and what you kind of look at after a game is perhaps live.
So the question is, if a game doesn't do well once it's live, like how do we deal with that? Do you mean from a business standpoint?
Well, I mean, what do you guys look at in assessing? What are the key things you guys look at after a game is live to assess kind of its initial performance and dramatic changes you would make to the game, or if you have a story similar to that about a game you guys launched?
Sure. So, well, I guess the first thing we do is look at the typical KPIs. So retention. We always go to an open beta first, soft launch, in different territories, and we're tweaking the retention there. And then once it's launched, you're looking at monetization as well. We've always had a problem with retention. I'm guessing everybody's always had a problem with retention. But the key is figuring out why. So is it because we don't have enough content, or our content is bad, or the tutorial is bad? Actually, in the tutorial itself, we have a ton of metrics there. Where are they churning? Which levels are they churning? And then, is it something you can fix in the current game? So for example, tutorial you can tweak. Not enough levels you can tweak, or adding an event maybe. But we have games that we no longer support, really. They're just kind of going on their own, but we don't update them anymore, simply because that's all the game that you can get from it, and we've moved on. So I hope I answered your question.
Great, we got time for one more quick one, so I'll let you guys rock, paper, scissors for it.
I think he was here first.
Okay.
I'll be here if you want to talk.
So how do they distinguish a feature that is just a work in progress or it's something just a very bad? And do you like just say, do you put work in progress features into live game or do you just like make sure test it well before like putting it live?
So the question is, how do you distinguish a feature that is work in progress from a really bad feature? And do we have works in progress live? Is that it? You get it? Okay, awesome. So, well, again, this is where prototyping works. So if your feature isn't fun with coder art or designer art, it's probably not fun. We try not to put in real art until the very last second, because once you see real art in there, it kind of masks how good the feature is. You know, oh, it's really pretty. And then it goes out, and then it wasn't fun. Not to mention it's expensive once the game, that feature is out, and it's not fun, and then you have to change everything. Yes, we've had games that have come out with not so great features that we've had to fix later on. In terms of work in progress, I don't think we really do that. It's more of making it modular. So for example, like if you're gonna do single player mode versus endless mode and you release single player first, or you could release a limited version of an endless mode and then add something else later, but I think the problem there is if you release anything that is work in progress, people don't know the difference unless you're in open beta and then it says there it's unreleased, there's still bugs, etc. So you have to treat everything live as pretty much final.
Thank you.
Awesome. Big round of applause for Luna, please. So good. Great talk.
Thanks, everybody.